Welcome to Unpacked, real conversations for diplomatic partners who are ready to unpack more than just boxes. This is the space for the brave questions, the messy middles, and the quiet decision to stop shrinking and start showing up fully. Talk identity, purpose, transitions, and what it really takes to feel at home in a life that's always moving. Because you've always been more than the label, and this is where we say it out loud. Hi, I'm Anna, and I am with my co host Emma. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our episode number 8 with the beautiful Emma Gore, Somerville, and Anna. And today we're continuing our mini series on dependency. And before recording, we actually brainstormed a bit and decided to go ahead today with the very important topic of social dependency.
Yes,
Hi,
Anna.
Emma.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Yeah, it's a very big topic, isn't it, Anna? Because social dependency, when we first arrive at the country, the only person that we know is our partner. They go off to work and they meet people very, very quickly because they're surrounded by workmates, teammates, team colleagues, and they have that integration straight away. And we don't necessarily have that. So we can become very reliant on meeting people via our partners and their work colleagues. And I definitely have felt this for myself, especially my first posting in Pakistan. And my husband when I first moved, he'd already actually been there for a year and a half. So he had a big group of friends. He had that group. So he actually threw a party for my arrival, which was very nice.
Of course, yes.
But that was quite overwhelming being in this room. Like, all these people know each other. Everyone knows Andrew, and I'm just like here. So yeah, how have you found that first moves and the first social introductions with people?
Yes, I'm the same. Because whenever you go to a new country, he instantaneously has new colleagues and maybe not straight away friends, but the social connections first, I think, normally come through your spouse who works at the mission. And for me, I think normally the way it went, some kind colleagues would have us over for dinner. I would meet their spouses, their families, and that's how it starts. So I think your first line of contact, so to speak, are people who work at the embassy and their families, the spouses. And if you've done a few postings, you know that it varies a lot. Sometimes, in a way, you're super lucky and you're straight away have amazing group of friends because they're kind of your people. Maybe you have kids similar age, because I remember when we first moved to Shanghai, we lived on a compound and it was full of kids. We had the most amazing birthday parties. All moms were lovely. The kids were similar age. I had such a good time there. And I remember on the first day, or the first day, let's say, when my husband went to work, I was given a little tour. I was taken to the local supermarket and the nearby shopping center by a fellow mom who also had a child similar age. So that was super cool, handy and easy. I didn't need to work hard to find people. And throughout these 3 years, actually, we did do a lot of things together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm just thinking, you're just taking me back to my first posting, when we were in Pakistan, did actually find meeting people. Obviously Andrew threw this big party for me, but then after that, when I started to move away from his social contacts and into my own social contacts, I found it very, very easy, and that was partly again because somebody knew that I was new to the post and invited me to a coffee morning, and I very quickly built up this bigger connection and community of women who were partners, so much so that within like 2 or 3 weeks I was inviting my husband to an event, which was really nice to do that. But it's very interesting, I find, having this dynamic when you are a partnership, because in a normal situation, you probably have your friends, he has his friends, you might have joint
Some mutual
friends,
friends. Yeah.
some mutual friends.
Yeah.
Whereas when you move to post, it's very often that you have just your friends, or it can be very common to just have your friends, and then outside of that you don't really see anyone else potentially on your own independently. And we've really talked about this when we're in that situation and we fully rely on our social activities to be all surrounded by our partner's routines. it can be it can be very debilitating for us as partners. So that understanding and having that awareness that it's really important to have your own independent set of friends, I think is huge for our independence. And I don't know, have you ever found that you've had to navigate that, that separate group of friends and then your group of friends? How have you found that situation, Anna?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, what happened to me, because when we started going overseas on postings, we had 3 kids. And trust me, if you have kids or dogs, you will be fine
Yeah.
wherever you go, because it's such an easy way then to make connections and meet amazing people. So, going back to Shanghai, my kids were at the American school, and I've been attending all sorts of events. My kids were also young, so I could come and watch them, or read a book. Um, and through school, actually, I started meeting other parents, and those people then became my friends. And in the long run, they became our joint friends. We had amazing parties. We had so much fun. So actually, most of our friends were from Belgium. Some were artists. There were H&M directors. There's really a mixed group of
Wow.
people, which is so cool, because I find personally, when you live as an expat, wherever you are, you're kind of already in a little bubble. If you're in diplomatic expat world, the bubble gets smaller. If you only stay within your embassy wall, I think it's tiny, tiny bubble,
Yes. And
which
it's
is
very
a
easy
blessing and a curse. Yeah,
yeah, and I think that's, it's very understandable why you get brought into that bubble so quickly. Um, and I completely agree. It's a blessing and a curse because you can be surrounded by all these people, um, and you can feel like you have all of your friends, and you feel like, I understand, especially when we've talked about, having that, common understanding of someone else's culture, which you might have in that British embassy, unless maybe you're a foreign-born spouse, and that's a whole other topic. Um, but if you are in a situation where you're you're in that really close knit community, it can feel safe and it can feel familiar. And I think sometimes that can take away our experience of the opportunities because, ultimately, one of the most exciting parts of being on a posting is to experience the greater outdoors world, all of those amazing things to understand different people's perspectives, to understand different people, different cultures. So if we just keep ourselves really, really small, even if it feels safe, and this isn't to judge anybody, I don't think, because if anybody is doing
no,
that, I think sometimes for some people, I think if you've never really, maybe for people who are from the UK, for example, you have, you know, lived in a small town or all of your life and you maybe just go to Europe on holiday, going to somewhere like Asia or Africa can be so overwhelming and such a cultural difference that just being in that small bubble can feel very safe. And it can be just exactly what you need, especially in those especially those first few months when you need to acclimatise and just feel at home and feel settled. But I completely agree with what you're saying, Anna. If you start to feel brave and you can start to push those boundaries, you've got this amazing world of expats that can really open up your eyes. And then even beyond that, like what we've just had a chat about, the having local friends and really immersing yourself into the local culture.
exactly. I think that's the biggest gift and blessing for me, when you also manage to have some local friends, because then you can see the world and the country through their eyes, which is so much different, you know. But I would. I agree with you, Emma. The way you were describing it, when you come and you have this comfort of your embassy and people who think alike and maybe look alike, and this is your comfort zone, which is wonderful because every change it's hard, right? You had to drop your life. You're now reinventing yourself. So I think it's good to be gentle and give yourself grace and exactly have some shortcuts if you have this instantaneous wonderful warm bubble that's already kind of holding you together. Well, definitely do it. And maybe once you start feeling more confident and more adventurous, then you can go out and branch out and meet people. And again, I think the more you do it, you kind of know better what thrills you. Definitely, like right now, I'm way more confident, but also depends on the country where you are. Um, you're more confident to do that because you have your social skills. You can make friends easily. I don't know. And I guess we're all different. Definitely not judging anyone, not saying what's
Yeah,
right, what's wrong, just sharing here our experience.
yeah.
Because I think whenever you move and you have this void and social isolation, and I think that's obviously you're already going through so many changes and it's challenging. You're like we don't want to be isolated and feel
No.
isolated and lonely and misunderstood.
Yeah.
But I think again we've touched upon it. Sometimes you can be so wonderfully lucky and really enjoy the company of other spouses in your embassy, but sometimes it may not be the case.
Yes.
It happens too,
Yeah, and
right? They're not your
well,
friends per definition.
and then we have this other concept of, and I think, and it's really important to talk about the fact that different posts have different setups. So if you've lived on compound or you've lived in a kind of a high security post, that's completely different to where you can be fully immersed in a city somewhere. And both have pros and cons. They're both completely different posting. But when you are in that compound, sometimes you can feel as if everyone knows exactly what you're doing. I've
Oh
had
yes.
I've had a couple of people say, "Oh yeah, I saw you out walking around the compound today. Have you got your steps in?" And in some ways, I'm like, "Oh well, yeah, that's quite nice actually. Nice. Thanks for spotting me." And
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's like, oh, it's and I think you've talked about this a lot, Anna, haven't you, about being in a fishbowl sometimes and having to be very aware of what you're saying and doing all of that self-monitoring of your talk and your behaviors when you live in such a close-knit community.
Exactly, because if you're already, let's say, if it's a small mission, if it's a small posting, everyone knows everyone, all spouses know each other. And then if you're kind of even sharing the living space almost to a degree that because you're all in the same compound, I think then it's your privacy and your private life and work, like the border gets very blurry. But I've been there too. Like in Shanghai, we lived in a compound on the same floor as my husband's boss. So
Yes.
So I remember, again, frankly, I had to be really careful what we were talking about at dinner table or when the kids were listening because our kids were spending a lot of time with their kids. The door to apartment was never closed because kids freely moving throughout the whole compound. So, which is great. That was amazing for the kids, amazing setup. But for an adult, oh yes, definitely had to self-monitor and be
Yeah.
obviously very mindful.
And it's very, and I think it's hard for us as partners, but it's also very hard for the working partner because in some ways well, for everyone, because you're always doing a representational role, you always feel like you have to have this professional
Composed.
appearance. Yeah, you have to be
Composed.
very composed, don't you?
You have?
And it's interesting because when we were in Pakistan, we lived on a compound, and I loved it. To be honest, I preferred it. And my husband had a house off compound when I first moved, and we actually moved on compound when I was there. And partly that was because um, I could walk to the gym. I could walk, I had easy access to people so that because I'm at home all the time, yes, I'm working and doing my own things, but because I am, I am there, it felt as if that was a really nice way for me to have people very quickly without making much effort. So when we were looking at other postings to apply for jobs on, we actually looked for other compound type posts because um, it really, I really liked that atmosphere. I liked the fact that my, not quite so on an apartment level, but my one of my best friends who came to our wedding, she was across the road and across one house, and she was like, "Oh, can I nip it for some flour?" Of course, it felt so nice to have those friendships really close, and what was really surprising for me when we came to Kenya is that feeling really wasn't replicated. Yes, we were on a compound. It's a completely different setup, so you can't really compare those things. But I could be, even though these people are saying, "Oh, I spotted you doing your walk," I can go for a walk round and round on my compound for 45 minutes, an hour, listen to a podcast or speaking to friends, and on on voice note, and I don't see anybody. And I live on this compound and I don't see anyone.
Where
Everyone.
is everyone?
Where is everyone? And
Where is everyone?
it's a small compound. So
Yeah.
there is also, I was more surprised when I came to Nairobi that it felt like there should be that ready-made community, ready-made friendships, and it wasn't there. And in some ways, I know we've talked about that comparing posts is not a good idea.
Well, I don't recommend.
No, it's
I
not.
would
It's
not.
not a good. It isn't a good idea. But it's not only natural that there
Yes.
is that element, and yeah, it took me by surprise. And I think that was partly why it took me a little bit longer than I expected. You know, I'd say I was expecting to have made my best friends within week one. It took me a month to find my best friends, so it wasn't that long to settle in. But there was that kind of like, oh, there isn't these ready built community, even though we are on a compound. So that comparison, for me, it reminded me, actually, I just thought you really have to take one posting as it is,
Yeah.
and you have to just know that you're going to go out there and make your own friends, and you're going to do it your way.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether you have a ready built community, or whether you are, whether you're living in a city. You have got access to the people, and you will find the right people, that your people, you know, when the time is right and when it works.
Exactly. And I think, as we discussed, Emma, we'd like to record another separate episode just talking about friendships and how to thrive socially wherever you go. But I think now we're talking about this from the angle view of being dependent when you first arrive in a new country, and how do you find your footing and branch out. And exactly, I think, yes, just to go back to this idea of every posting is so different. I really think like comparison in life, it just kills joy. The joy
It
killer
is.
number one.
It is. It
This
is.
the self confidence killer number one. I don't know. It's just really bad because right when we start comparing things or people or anything, it's just yeah. I don't think it's a resourceful thing or useful thing to do. So what I've learned, exactly, you've done that and that was amazing. And I think again it just comes with practice. You realize, oh my god, they're so different. Even if it's a compound, it does not mean it will be the same. It does not mean I will have the same amazing friendships as I had in my previous place. So what? It's different. And again, once you know, I think, and that's what matters for both of us as coaches the most, when you know and you have this very deeply anchored self trust. I've got it.
Yes.
Compound, not compound, hardship, not hardship. I can figure it out. I'm good at this. I know how to do this. Sorry, shit. So
Yeah.
you'll be fine.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think that if I want to, when we go to our third post, and I will feel completely different again. And who knows? It's funny, isn't it? After your first post, you think, "Oh yeah, the next one I'll know what to do," and then the second one came for me, and I was like, "Oh, this is different," and it made me feel wobbly. So now I'm thinking, okay, yeah, the third one, I'm gonna have this. So, I mean, am I completely being naive here, Anna? Have you felt like you have? I don't want to say the word improve because that's not the right word, but kind of your perspective or the ease of settling in over all these posts, and has it got easier, or like have you been able to shed the expectations from yourself a bit easier?
Definitely, I think the more we do something, the better we get at it. So definitely logistically, the mindset, everything, I think I shared this story when we went on our first posting. I was so anxious. I could not sleep. I overdosed on sleeping pills back in Australia. So
Oh my goodness.
well, now I'm moving around like a pro. But having said that, I actually wrote about exactly this topic the other day on LinkedIn, and I said every move is like a childbirth. Really, even if you've gone through it and it was exhausting and painful, and you settled in and things are working and you love your baby, you love your life, and then by the time the next birth comes, the next baby comes along, the labor will still be hard. You
Yeah.
cannot say it will be easier. Or it's like marathon. Okay, maybe you've done a few, but it's still the hard work.
Yeah.
I don't think it gets much easier, and I would say yes, you get way better at certain things like the mindset, the logistics. But I think the longer you do that, and if you don't take care of some part of your life, the moving around will be harder. Because if you by the time you're on your third posting, you really lost yourself, well, I can guarantee you the fourth one will be even more devastating,
Yes.
even more to the degree, what am I doing here? Is my life? What am I actually doing with me?
Yeah.
I'm withering away. I'm living someone else's life.
Yeah. And
So,
having all of their friends too, probably at that point.
and that's why I think you do want to start this life prepared and know what to do. Again, I think Emma, you shared with me the findings of this study, the well-being, right? That I remember you were telling me that you were surprised when they did research on the well-being of the partners, first posting versus, I don't know, fourth.
Oh yeah,
They saw the
it's my
first.
research.
Exactly,
Yes,
exactly. So
because
share that. So
yeah.
that's
So in my research, there is, well, I and when I did this research, I actually got our community liaison officers involved, because obviously community liaison officers are so important for the well-being and the integration of partners into the community. And it's a big role. And I asked them their hypothesis about whether males or females would have better or worse well-being, foreign-born spouses versus British-born spouses, because I just worked within
yeah.
the British community. And then I did it again on number of postings that they had done. And to be honest, the research that we found, we assumed, and I assumed with them, that you would have these tools as you did more and more postings, and maybe you'd be able to adapt. But actually, their well-being decreased. So it was the people who were on their first post and had higher well-being than the later ones. I cannot come to any sort of formal conclusions, because we didn't then go into depth about the people who responded, their actual well-being needs. But there is this aspect of, if you have done many postings, your life circumstances from your first posting has probably dramatically changed. You might have older children, you might
Oh,
have
yes.
children outside of the country, you might have aging parents, you
Absolutely.
might be
Yes.
splitting your time more over different places. You might be at the point where you've lost yourself on post two, and then it's got worse and worse and worse.
Yep.
So there is a huge amount of life and personal experience that really can shape how your well-being and um, how you feel about yourself in every single posting. But the biggest, and this is what I was amazed by, if anyone knows me, I'm a big positive psychology fan and a big sciencey geek. There is the well-being survey that I did is linked to PERMA, so it's a The PERMA stands for positive emotions, engagements, relationships, meaning, and achievement. And it's like the five subsections that this guy, Martin Seligman, said, if you've got all five, you're doing a great thing. You've got a full rounded well-being. The thing that seemed to correlate for, all of the partners, whether it's first, second, third, fourth, fifth posting, relationships was a massive predictor of having really good well-being. It was huge. People with the strongest levels of relationships, so that they were really high scoring, the levels of loneliness and social isolation were the lowest, which obviously makes sense. Whereas the people who scored the lowest well-being had very high levels of social isolation and felt lonely. So for
Exactly.
me, this social dependency, and this is what I proposed to the community liaison officers at the time. I was like, you really need to change your perception of what your role is. I mean, who am I to say what their job description should be? But the perception of the role that I think for really helping people support people is helping them build those relationships. If you can facilitate relationships within a community, they are doing all of the hard work for you. Basically, you've done your job. That's it. You're not going to get those. And I know lots of community liaison officers who, they get all sorts of complaints and everything. God bless their souls because they have patience, I think. Um, you know, they must hear from the same people over and over again, um, because most of the time, or making again a massive assumption here, that they want that contact with somebody, and they want someone to hear their problems. They want someone
Yeah.
to share how they're feeling, and so they will use that point of contact as much as they possibly can, so that they can get that.
Yes.
So for me, forming those relationships and forming independent relationships away from your partner seems to me like it would be the biggest predictor of success in overseas postings. Helps you feel more, feels like you've got meaning. It can help. It makes you feel good. You've got some positive interactions in the day. So yeah, I think, and it's what I don't know about you, but it's the first thing that I prioritize when I move to a new country, is making those relationships. I met this, and forgive me if I've said this on the podcast before, but I met this wonderful lady in Pakistan, and she said to me, she said, I was like, how do you fit everything in? Because I came, I had these grand plans of getting all of my essays and my assignments done and starting all of these things. And I was like, I've had no time. I'm too busy meeting people. And she said to me, Emma, do not try and do anything else in the first few months apart from meet your people, get your routines, get yourself feeling at home. Then all of the other stuff will just come easy peasy. And I think she was completely right. If you can focus on building those friendships and relationships, everything else falls into place.
That's a very good advice. I like that. I
Yeah.
like that too. I think I'm just thinking, how do I do it? I think maybe slightly differently right now. I think it also depends on the stage of life you're in, or the
Yeah.
phase, and what you're actually after. Because let's say, I don't know, if you really, and I know you are working, I'm working, we maybe don't have as much time to socialize as those who don't work necessarily. But I think for me, it's really, I'd say the quality trumps quantity. I would
Yes.
go for good friends, some connections that really lift you up, and be picky. You are amazing. Just, maybe be patient. And it's okay. I think we've all been there trying just to have some belonging and connections. But if you cannot really be yourself and authentic, true, I don't know, Emma or Anna, like for me, it doesn't cut it anymore. I'm not wasting my time on those superficial connections. And that's why I think we're doing this podcast, because we want to talk about real stuff
Yeah.
and not just about the weather and the holidays,
Yes.
because it's not fulfilling. Yeah.
No. And it's amazing, isn't it, Anna? I think, we connected over, a direct message on Instagram. And within one Zoom conversation, it felt like I've known you forever. And
Exactly.
I just think it's those types of relationships that and we've talked about this before, about being a bit more vulnerable, about sharing your experiences,
Yes,
about sharing those. It's the quickest way to accelerate meeting someone and meeting them where they are. And if they don't share that vulnerability that back with you, then you know they're not the right people.
exactly. That's your bridge builder. I always say, like,
Yes.
if you want to be real, like, if you want to have real connections, you have to be a bit vulnerable. And I think when you're overseas, you have, I don't know, 3 to 4 years. You cannot spend, I don't know, 6 months on just getting through your small talk and on your way to something more deeper. It's a
No.
waste of time. Why would you do that?
Well, and it goes on forever and ever, doesn't it? Because
Yeah.
you can go to every coffee morning in the world and
And still
that's
feel very lonely and very
still,
isolated. I think we've
yes.
all been there.
Oh,
So I think we
100%.
almost kind of need to wrap this one up.
Yeah.
And so, what's the main takeaway? Yes, you arrive socially dependent, but not forever. Use it as your comfort zone and bouncing off place
Yes.
and start exploring. And no rush, but yes, I agree. Prioritize relationships because they are important. Meet your people, be picky, be
Yes.
choosy.
I agree.
And I think luckily right now there is also this digital world with beautiful connections and opportunities to meet people in the same boat. Mhm.
Yeah, and I think it is about being brave, isn't it? And you know, you have to put yourself out there. So even if it is a coffee morning where you're having these superficial chats, it takes a lot of courage, a lot of bravery to put yourself in a room full of people. When you get there, that's when you can start to, I don't know, just look around the room and see which one looks a nice, warm, friendly face, and then go there and just ask them something. Ask them something that you want to know. And then just
Exactly.
see how it doesn't have to be, when we talk about vulnerability, it doesn't need to be, you're sharing your deepest, darkest secrets.
Exactly. Oh no, no,
you
no,
know,
no.
it can literally just be, I really need a new hairdresser, and, I've got this big fear about someone cutting all my hair off. You know, that's it. It's a superficial fear. And can you just help me out? Giving someone an opportunity to show up for you, I think, does wonders. Because when you give them that opportunity, they'll want to do that for you, and then you will also then want to reciprocate that for themselves.
Absolutely. I think genuine interest and being open-minded and open. And I would say, in the beginning, just say yes to everything, and then you'll figure out what kind of what brings you joy and what doesn't. Right? But in the
Yeah,
beginning, just get out there, say yes. You're invited, say yes.
yeah.
Go, and then you'll work it out.
And then,
So
but
I
then
think,
don't just, when you say the yes, and I was just about, if you say the yes and then you realise that that's not quite right, don't be then afraid to then say no the very next time.
oh yes. But I think again, this is getting out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, there is no one can tell you what's right, what's wrong. It's really through trial and error. You just want to get out there and try out a few things and see how it works. But we're definitely going to record another episode on friendships. And I
Yes.
was thinking maybe also let's do one on community liaison officers and because I've done this job.
Oh, have you?
Yes,
Oh,
I've done
sorry. Have
that
I
too.
have I offended you now with my
No,
community
you have
liaison
not
officer chat?
insulted me. But I can also, I agree with you with what you say. I think it's way more than just logistics. And I think for some reasons, a lot of what community liaisons officers are expected to do is still kind of being the focal point for information, for this, for that. Okay, obviously, still some problems. But I don't think they're community builders. That's not in the job description.
No,
But
I don't
that
think it
would be
is.
so good. That
Yeah.
would be actually really good.
And no, but and I think no, there's a lot of pressure on community liaison officers to be everything when actually they have or from what I'm aware of, a massive responsibility for admin. and
I think
of maybe
maybe
that
it works
depends.
differently. So exactly
Yeah,
when I did it on a post, 1.5 years being community liaison officer, I did some community building events, like organize lunches once a
yeah,
month, and I think that's in a way the max you can do, or that falls within your description, providing some information on the, I don't know, activities and this and that. doing tours of hospitals.
Yes.
So I've
City
done all
tours.
that. Yeah, yeah, I've done all of that. But I think, guys, if you're listening and have brilliant ideas, just share. Or maybe your community liaison office is absolutely amazing. Tell us.
Yes, and I think that
Okay.
that's what, because there is some
Great.
amazing practice out there, and I think that community liaison officers, they have this huge responsibility, and we have some wonderful, wonderful people who are really trying their best to build communities, build engagement within a community, and I know that there are like community liaison networks and things like that, but they, it would be great if we can start to communicate that even wider, because I don't know how effective those communication networks are.
Exactly. I think we kind of have to do, yeah, take the initiative, I'd say.
Yes.
Let's connect the people and spread the word. And so we have this anonymous survey. Everyone just
Yes.
from like it's attached to every episode.
Yep.
Underneath the episode and description, you can find this link, and if you click on it, you can ask us a question. We'd love to hear from you, because once again, this is for you, for us. That's our space.
Yes. And it's always a pleasure, and it's really nice to have different perspectives. And this is what I love about having our talks, because we offer so many different things. So, even when this is just our own experiences, adding everybody else's experiences into that mix is really, really fascinating. So yeah, please do share your questions, share your ideas, and we really do want to make these episodes just for you.
Well, it was lovely talking to you, Anna.
Yeah, really nice.
Can't wait for this episode to be out.
Yes.
Have a lovely rest of your week, day. And you can find Emma on The Zesty Life
Yeah.
on Instagram, and Not Just a Spouse on Instagram as well for me. And we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, have a really nice day, everybody.
Bye.
Love to
Bye.
speak to you. Bye bye.